And the first time I interviewed Midge Ure was 1982. So 40 years ago, he and I were talking about rock and roll. Midge, a very good morning to you.
I'm not gonna listen to this. 40 years is nonsense.
Where's that gone? Where's that gone?
It's gone with my hair. That's what it's
Crikey,
gone.
Charlie. Do you know, very quickly, I just love asking this question of all artists, and I think it's really pertinent. When I look back at your history, and you are one of those rare artists, you've had hits in the 70s, the 80s and the 90s. So to be making successful music for 3 decades where the charts are concerned, incredible. But looking at the bands you've been, I mean, I forget until I look at your bio that you did a short stint in Thin Lizzy. You were in Slick, who were like sort of Thinking Man's Bay City Rollers. You then Ultravox on. But of all the songs you've ever made, written and recorded, only one. What would the baby of those be that you never get fed up of listening to it and you love it so much?
Oh, you know what? It's kind of multifaceted. It's a bit like asking, what your favourite daughter is. You don't have one. But if it's someone else's choice, it's got to be the ones that people know. The ones that people met to and fell in love to, and consummated a marriage to, depending on what. It's usually Vienna because it speeds up in the middle. They're the moments. It's not for me to say; it's for other people to do it. The songs that I like that I've done are usually the ones that weren't big commercial successes, because they tended to be the more interesting songs for me. But then I'm a muso. What do I know?
Well, though Eddie in Wigan's just been in touch with me, he emailed me and said that he just thinks that Ghosts of Princes in Towers that you did with Rich Kids he thinks the best thing you ever did.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's weirdly, I saw Glenn on the television yesterday giving the government a hard time, so he's still got that punk attitude running through his bones.
I don't want to be in any way an agent provocateur here. I'm not trying to cause any issues whatsoever, but it always amazes me that to a certain extent, people forget or aren't informed that when the legendary Live Aid took place, that you were 50% of the genesis of that. How do you feel about sometimes history maybe forgets you?
You know what? I think it's totally understandable. Bob's a very memorable character. He's tall, he's brash. He's kind of in your face. He's hugely knowledgeable and highly intelligent. Even in the day, even as I was, I was riding high in the charts, and Bob had been on television, screaming at people. He was the one that got noticed. People thought I was Peter Gabriel. It's like you think, what? Hello.
You and I are from similar backgrounds. You left school like I did at 15 years of age. How important your working class background to you, even now, Midge? In fact, more so now when you're successful.
Very much so. Very much so. So I go back to Cambuslang. I was born in the outskirts of Glasgow, a place called Cambuslang. And when I'm up there visiting and I have a day off or an afternoon off, I go and I walk round the streets that still exist that I used to walk round as a kid in short trousers, dreaming of possibly doing something like this. And I do it not for nostalgia's sake. I do it to remind me that I got it, that I got what I wanted, I got what I dreamed of. And it's so easy to take that, in your stride and be complacent about it. And I've been close to doing that a couple of times, thinking I deserved it all. Most of the time, it's down to luck. So I go back and I remind myself, this is what you wanted. So when you get tired doing the interviews, when you get tired sitting in a bus, when you get tired getting on a plane, just be grateful. And that's what I do.
Well, I was talking about you the other day. I was having a conversation about where you come from and how important it is. And I mentioned you and Lulu actually in the same voice. I said, I've spoken to Midge Ure in the past and to Lulu in the past. I said, and they've been incredibly successful and they've got decent lifestyles, I said, and yet neither of them would be fazed in the slightest by the size of an outside toilet. And that to me, that to me defines where you come from.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think my daughters might see it slightly
Oh,
differently.
I think they would do.
Had they ever? Here's a great story for you, because I was born in a tenement slum in the outskirts of Glasgow, and I lived there till I was 10, and that had an outside toilet. And then we got moved to a council house half a mile down the road, but still had no heating or whatever. And my daughters had heard me moaning about the state of the place that I was born. And one of the days we were up in Glasgow, we had an afternoon off, and they said, "Oh, drive us past your house." So I took them past the new council house when I was 10, and they all went, "Oh God, Dad, it's horrible." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. This is the good one. This is the nice one. The horrible one's been done. The horrible one's been demolished." So it just goes to show, I've still very much got my working class roots.
Who were your rock and roll influences in your early days, do you think?
You know what? It's like we all have them. We all have people that have influenced us, and it's like if you're flicking through a book like a timeline, it would have been, to start with, it would have been Jerry and the Pacemakers, or it would have been a bit of the Beatles, and then you move on and you discover guitar players. You discovered Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck and Peter Green and whatever. Then you discover David Bowie. Then you discover Roxy Music. Then you discover, and it's a never-ending thing. It's like peeling layers off of something, and the old bits of skin that you're peeling off, you don't discard them, because they're part of your makeup. They're part of what you become. All of those influences, musical influences, books, teachers, things you've learned over the years, they stay with you, and it helps form what you are. So I'm still uberly excited when I hear, Hank Marvin and the Shadows coming out a radio somewhere, and I go, "Hey!" I used to dream of having a guitar listening to that. And that stuff doesn't go away. So, yeah, it depends what period you're talking about as to who was the big influence at the time.
I remember Dave D from Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick and Titch was working for Warner Brothers when I got my first record contract in very early 78, and he came to see us, signed us up, but he said to me, "How old are you, Sweens?" And at the time I said, I'm 30. I'm 31 in September. He said, "I'm going to paraphrase this, Midge." He said, "No, you flipping not." He said, "You're 22." So I was 22 for 10 years because you couldn't be 30.
30.
I look at us now, and I'm 6 years older than you, and we're still not just doing it. We're not dragging ourselves through. We're full of life and enthusiasm and energy. Where does it come from?
It doesn't. There's music. It comes from music. It's a youthful industry. You can't stop the passage of time. Physically, but emotionally, we're still 15-year-old kids. We're still dreaming of those guitars. I still get excited at looking at a Lambretta SX. I still get excited looking at a lovely bright red Fender Stratocaster. I shouldn't be. I can afford those things, but that kick inside is still there. The buzz you get from the stuff that always excited you never goes away.
I know that earlier in the programme, you wouldn't have been listening at that point. We were discussing grassroots venues, and I remember that when you were in the early edition of Slick, you did Clouds, the Clouds Club, as a residency in Edinburgh. How important to you as a young musician were those grassroots music venues?
Well, in Scotland, it was different from everywhere else. In Scotland, the licensing laws, which were run by the church, forbid anyone to pay money in a pub to go and see an act playing live. So we had no pub rock circuit. So we had to play, we were like, human jukeboxes. You had to go out and play whatever was in the top 40. We were very selective. We chose the good stuff. But you still had to go out there and perform someone else's songs to do it. But the kind of the grounding you got from that as a musician was great, because you had to 1 minute be playing a Bob Marley tune or whatever, and then you'd have to jump over and do a David Bowie tune or whatever. So you had to be fairly versatile. The problem was that it left you completely confused as to what you actually were until you started out on your journey of writing songs. And the first few songs I wrote were very derivative. They're very, you could connect the dots, go, and that one's Roxy Music, that one's a David Bowie song, that's Queen, that's the. But you grow out of that. All of that stuff finally you emerge like a little flower coming out of a sea of weeds, and you emerge and you've developed your own particular style. You know, I don't think anyone can teach you how to write a song. You know, you have to start by, you know, doing just what I've said, and hopefully develop your own thing.
Well, I get as much pleasure and enthusiasm out of talking to you now as I did 40 years ago. In 1982, I'm going to play some of your songs to say goodbye, but you're here in Manchester on the 28th of May. You've got a great venue at the Albert Halls. Midge, you'll love it. It's a great venue.
Yes, I did it on the 1980 tour 3 years ago, and it was a fantastic. You could have cut the atmosphere, and taken it up to Glasgow and given the Barrowlands a run for its money. It was just electric. So I'm really looking forward to it. You
take really good care of yourself, my friend. All the best.
Thank you, Andrew.
Cheers, thank you. Midge Ure in conversation, hopefully not for the last time. Hope that we'll get together again. In fact, it'd be great if we can get together. He's hitting Manchester on the 28th of May. He's at the Albert Halls. But just to give you a heads up to what this man has done musically, have a listen to this.